there's so many people, it seems, that they have a very difficult time saying that it's not me. I don't deserve someone abusing me verbally, physically, emotionally, mentally, right? And I know a few of my friends, men and women, that have gone through it. I know some men that, they're emotionally, mentally abused, where they had to end up taking pills to to deal with it. And some
Yeah.
other women, they were abused to the point where their self-esteem, and then they became something totally different than when you recognize them. And when you see people going through this abuse, especially,
Mm.
I'll use myself, especially for me, I know how they were before,
Yeah.
right? When you look
Yeah.
at someone going through it, like when it's full steam, right? Because, and you can talk to this, in the beginning, the abuse, it's subtle. It's like, oh,
Correct.
Rachel, you're this, but tomorrow I buy you
Mhm.
flowers. Oh, Rachel, I don't
Mhm.
like this on you because you look like this, but I buy you chocolates, I give you a compliment, or like your hair. It seems to be, they tear you down a little bit, then they give you something to feel good, then they tear you down and tear you down to the point where, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, they take away your choice and you feel like you're enslaved to this
Mhm.
person, because now they control your movement, they control your confidence, control your feel, and most importantly, they control your happiness.
Mhm.
So when I look at some of these people, like,
So
is this
true.
something that you see when you're dealing with it, when you're helping these people who are maybe having a difficult time, who may not have the big smile and the lots of energy that you have
Mhm.
now? Like, how difficult is it for these people going through it?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, it's extremely painful because I want to speak to something that's kind of tangent to what we're talking about, but related. So, you know, part of the complexity of abuse is we know that well over 90% of trauma happens within the family. It is somebody who is a trusted, known adult. And so what that sets up is, my grandfather, certainly before the abuse started, but even as the abuse was happening and continuing, he wasn't just this monster that was like yelling at me and harming me and like, terrorizing me. He was also still the guy who we went on the lawnmower with, or we played or we watched TV together. And so there's this duality that everybody who's experiences abuse by somebody who they know and love will be sitting with and holding the complexity of. It would be easy in some ways if the person was just a monster, but they hardly ever are. They are complex themselves. And we are sitting in that complexity. I love this person. This person does these amazing things for me. And right alongside that, this person is harming me and hurting me. And then the repetition of that patterning in our adult relationships. It's just a patterning. And so in my relationships, I kept doing that, being with people who were hurting me and loving me. And because I was, let's say, familiar with that feeling, it didn't ding anything in me. It didn't set off any alarms for me. It was like, yeah, right. Yeah. Like something's wrong here. Like it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh shit, that's not how it's supposed to feel. I remember one of the first dates I went on after I divorced, and he was being a lovely gentleman, opening doors and these sorts of things. And I was blown away, Terrain. I was like, oh my gosh, you're like the best guy ever. Like you opened the door, and he looks me dead in the eyes and he goes, Rachel, you know that's just like the bottom bar. I was
I've
like,
had
wait, what?
that. I've had that same conversation when I've gone on dates. Some people, it's like you give them a compliment that is actually sincere, and it's like you made them what the feeling is like they just won the lottery, and you're like,
Yeah. So I had to learn, I had to basically like get a whole new orientation to what I deserved, what was the bare minimum in relationship, and begin to understand that, within that 10-year relationship, my remaining was very much all tied up with not believing that I deserved anything better, not believing that I could do it on my own. Definitely the isolation that happened, certainly the stripping away of family and connections, like that certainly added to that. But when we did divorce, I was sitting in my new apartment and all I had was a lamp and a sleeping bag at that point. And I'm looking at my life and thinking, my gosh, if something doesn't change, this is going to keep happening. And that was really just the turning point for me. I had this strong internal conviction of like, I have got to get my shit together like right now and do something about this. And I just became obsessed with trying to answer this question of how do I actually heal from sexual abuse? And so I began reading everything I could. Eventually, right, kids are growing up. And so my friend says, I think you need to go to grad school, which I was not excited about, but I was like, okay, probably right. So I did my master's in counseling psychology. And kind of along the way, I'm using myself as a guinea pig. I'm studying neuroscience. I'm starting to put some pieces together. I'm thinking a lot about what did not work for me in therapy. How did therapy let me down? And what I started to notice that I kept coming back to again and again and again was my absolute frustration with going into therapy, talking about the experiences that I'd had, feeling very stuck and unsure about what to do, how to solve it, and getting back from my therapist things like, well, how do you feel about that? What do you think you should do? Look inside for the answers. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I knew the answer, I would not be sitting here paying you hundreds of dollars, right? And I just realized that for me, that was the piece of the puzzle that was missing. But like, what do we actually do about it? Not just like, let's talk about it. That is a part of the process. But I just felt like this was setting people up to be stuck in this survivor stage forever.